Welcome to Kanata Connections. I'm David Watts. I am Kanata, and I, that is we. Villages of life that stretch from sea to sea to sea. A human constellation, as long as the rivers run. Kanata, Kanacha, Canadian. We are Canadian. In our past two sessions, we set out, in brief, 8 Kanata traits, 4 foundational and 4 derivative, that describe, not define, who we are. Today we're going to begin to flesh out each of these at length, returning to Kanata trait number 1. Our first, most basic Kanata trait is cached in the name we adopted at Confederation in 1867. It had already been part of our written constitution tradition for 76 years when Britain divided the French-speaking and indigenous region it had acquired in war into 2 Canadas, Lower and Upper, later called Canada East and West for a short time. But the word Canada, more exactly Kanata, had been used by New France for 257 years and for centuries longer by First Nations. Kanata is an indigenous word for village we kept as the name of our federation. It's more than that, a village spirit that's been part of the story of Turtle Island North before contact. A Kanata spirit is an alternative to the polis spirit, a European city-state model that has degenerated into the modern practice of politics that focuses on acquiring, holding, and concentrating power. The village spirit is about relationships, the kind of village it takes to raise a child. If we can live in this spirit and make it the compass of our affairs, we'll have something to share with others. We don't have to live in a municipality of less than 500 to experience a Kanata dynamic. We may find it at a meeting of a community league, parish, even a city council that's called to consult, listen, and come to a common mind, not put through an agenda. We'll seek it in vain in a village run by a clique or manager taking orders from a bureaucracy that sees the town as a hinterland. Being Kanatans doesn't make us buddies. Those who challenge or frustrate us are as vital to our growth as friends. A villager has the chance, often no choice, but to interact with those we find strange without calling in security or a social worker, something not found in gated communities. Summer 2017, I took up the challenge to make my own Northwest Passage. I'd set toe north of 60 into Yukon and the Northwest Territories, but never into the higher Arctic. With our name's meaning in mind, I spent 6 weeks in the Confederation 150 year visiting mini Kanatas on a self-guided transit of villages on or near the Arctic coast, from Old Crow, Yukon to Kugurik, Nunavut, bebopping in and out by air from Whitehorse, Yellowknife, and Iqaluit. Those last 3 were decidedly not villages. In a half-dozen small settlements, each with its own character and sharing features of a health center, post office, RCMP, school library, Hudson Bay or co-op, churches, bank, and band office, one impression stood out. If I was walking a gravel road, trail, or shoreline, and someone from the opposite direction passed me on foot, a bike, or ATV, they'd look me straight in the eye for 15 to 20 seconds, then usually break into a smile. I took this as a mark of people who know who they are, size up outsiders quickly, and are prepared to engage us selectively. A friend suggested this comes from living on the edge of survival on the land. I agree. Such fleeting, wordless connections are touching to one from a large city where smiles and eye contact, if offered, are more social convention than human contact. I realized I would not be a long-term fit in that northern world. Yet I asked myself, what is it from these encounters that we can learn and apply in an urban wilderness where spiritual, not physical survival is at issue? How can the qualities attributed to a village raising a child be rooted in a country, a region, and a federation that, in distinct moments of time, chose to describe themselves as a village. I'll put out some answers in later Kanata trait podcasts. One example, a collaborative approach, such as between Crowfoot and Red Crow in the lead up to Treaty 7, could have helped avoid a crisis in negotiating a constitutional agreement 120 years later, rather than strong-arming and rolling the dice that brought us to the brink of breakup. For those not at the federal-provincial table, here are 3 modest steps in the right direction. First, find communities and agencies closer to grassroots of services and products to be delivered. Local and regional supply chains can deliver better than many international ones. The federal government does not need to insist on one-size-fits-all when provinces are prepared to lead. Provincial governments do not have to impose standards on municipal projects they may fund. 2. Turn down the temperature of debate that's a cover for inaction. People are interested in seeing a challenge met more than in who gets the credit. Actions speak louder than words. 3. Let's adopt an indigenous inflection of our name that's more a ripple or rustle than a drumbeat. Kanata is gentler than Canada and more balanced, with the second syllable stressed, Kanata, rather than the first in English, Canada, or the third in French, Canada. This new sound can shape a friendlier spirit among us, one that can carry to our neighbors abroad. Kanata is village in Algonquin. In English and French, few personal or place names have meanings that are obvious. Frank, Hope, Rock, Pierre, and Patricia add an N are examples. Names for children are usually chosen for sound or for a celebrity or fictional character. Parents who are expecting may see meanings in a list of names they're considering, but this is usually incidental. First Nations in the north half of Turtle Island were more likely to choose names with meanings they aspired to for their children. 2 non-Indigenous families I've known waited a matter of weeks before deciding on a name for a newcomer. That way they could observe, try on a name for size and see if it fitted, rather than apply it like a label to a freshly canned jar of preserves. In Indigenous societies, names can change to mark milestones in one's life. This also happened in non-Indigenous cultures when one joined a religious order, military unit. Lester Pearson was nicknamed Mike by his World War I flying instructor who thought Lester too tame for combat. Others adopt a new screen name or stage name when they enter a career in the arts. In our half-continent, most place names are not transplants from somewhere else, like New Westminster or Ardrossan, or after someone, Kitchener, Brockville, but Indigenous, Athabasca, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, Quebec. We may mispronounce them or not know how they came to be, yet they add a music to our ears and reflect the spirit of the land we live in. For Kanata Connections, I'm David Watts. Kanata, au long des rivières, les villages lumineux au-delà des frontières, a human constellation as long as the rivers run. Kanata, Kanata, Canadien, we are Canadian.